So as you may have caught in my last video, a group of amazing municipal leaders came together as part of a biannual leadership development event. First time this is virtual itself. And so how very fitting that so much of what we're going to be talking about is how do you recognize, how do you keep morale up, how do you keep people engaged when so many people are working from home? There's no end in sight to that. And there's also a lot of people in a municipality who have been on boots on the ground throughout this whole COVID silliness, right? So, all right, let's talk about some of the remaining questions that you have. These are really, really great questions. Goes to show what a smart group they are. Okay, additional resources about meetings and recognition. Number one, right off the top, if every single meeting you have, even if it is 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes tops, begins with some acknowledgement, some question about appreciation, about what's working, about what you can be grateful for, about who has helped. All of that sets the right tone of a meeting. In fact, on my website, greatnessmagnified.com, under cool stuff, I actually have a tool right at the bottom of that page on the left-hand side that says meeting openers. And it's just very, very open-ended questions. You can add to them, you can evolve them. For some of you, you may actually have my solution-focused questions, which you can also pull those out. If you have this particular tool, so what will be better a year from now? How will you define success going forward? What advice would a best friend give you right now? What's the most important thing to understand? So if you have this resource, these solution-focused coaching cards, the frog cards, you could use some of those to inspire beginnings of meetings. So that's the first thing I would say, is make sure you start the meeting off right, because you will notice, as I'm sure you've found in your career, that all the things that come out after that are more likely to be positive, solution focused versus problem centric, and be contributing to the bigger whole, as opposed to people sort of railroading over your agenda for their own personal agenda. Going to the belief that everybody is doing the best that they can, it also allows you to check in with your, whether it's virtual or live and in person, able to sort of figure out, based on what you're used to seeing, how well people are doing. I mean, my husband's a virtual teacher, so he's online all the time with kids. But he'll even say to me, I think kids are struggling today because they won't be as participatory as they normally are online. And when I say normally are, it's not particularly participatory. But the point is, you'll also know that from somebody who's running a meeting, whether it's a project team, your own team, you'll be able to see if, even despite starting off on a really abundance-oriented note, that the participation, the engagement is low, then that goes to show that we need to sort of spark that somehow. And I have had situations when I've been leading a meeting or co-hosting a meeting where I've had to scrap the agenda and say, okay, what are we not talking about? What do I need to know? What's the most important thing we need to discuss? Because if you get to the things that matter most to the people in the room, everything that you can come back to the agenda and move forward, as opposed to what usually happens is we create an agenda, we just push on, move on, despite what's going on around us. I hope that's helpful. I hope that resource on the website is helpful as well. If you have follow-up questions, then please put them in the comments below. All right. Do you have a list of virtual recognition ideas and effective ways to recognize staff? So what I'm going to do, again, posted in the comment section below, is a link to other virtual ideas. For example, I have a virtual recognition calendar, a different idea every single day, whether you use it with a peer, with a staff member, with family, with volunteers. It fits for everybody. So that's one thing, is I would make it a habit every single day to practice recognition across the digital divide. The other thing is that every single time you have touch points with people, virtual meetings, face-to-face meetings, finding something to acknowledge before the end of that is over. I'd love to be able to tap into your skill, your expertise, your passion about why, and asking for people's ideas. That is another way to show that you recognize people. So, as much as there are tools out there that I have and I'd love for you to utilize that have kind of how-to strategies, remember the most important ways in which we recognize people are ones that transcend the digital divide. Every time people feel seen, heard, and valued, you spark connection. Remember Brene Brown's quote, "Connection is the energy that builds and exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued." Every single time you see people, you hear people by deep, meaningful listening, and that you take a moment to make sure that they know they're valued. All of those, are ways in which you make sure that you acknowledge people. So hope that that's helpful. Again, follow-up question, by all means, pop it in the comments below. Do you have any resources to help with recognizing diverse types of staff? The recognition checklist that we talked about is a great way to be able to assess and evaluate the different ways that everybody wants to be recognized. And you can take that tool as a jumping off point. So let's say you have a lot of people from a particular nation, part of the world, part of the culture, and you happen to know that what doesn't work generally for people who live in this culture, as opposed to other people, you can modify that recognition checklist and then send that out and utilize that with your staff. The thing I really want to caution us, though, is that there is a universal need for people to be seen, heard, and valued. It's just the how that may change a little bit. So, for example, in more collectivist cultures, both geographic cultures and social cultures, as well as organizational cultures, collectivist cultures being the group matters more than the individual. And then, of course, individualistic cultures where the individual contributor matters more, and their performance matters more and is evaluated over, the broader group. In collectivist cultures and, teaching, nursing, some of those professions, firefighting, policing, sometimes it's almost, get that tall poppy syndrome. If you pop your head up, it could potentially get lopped off. In fact, I'll put a link into the comments below about an article that I wrote about that. Now, that's not to say it happens every time. It's just the social norms, the unwritten social contract of the group is about we as opposed to about you or I. So a lot of the time, what works well for recognition with collectivist cultures, again, country cultures from that like diversity inclusion perspective, as well as from an organizational culture perspective, is understanding which group, what do they most value, the individual, the group, and then within that there'll be differences. So I may be perhaps part of a nursing group, but I want to be acknowledged personally, specifically for what I have contributed. You may have a firefighter who would be completely embarrassed to be pointed out in front of colleagues, and wonderful colleagues. I'm sure that their colleagues are super supportive of her, but she really she would prefer it if it were a team acknowledgement, because she feels like, yes, that I did that thing, but there's no way I would have done it had it not been for the support of my mentor, my preceptor, my team that pulled together for that particular thing that she was able to do really well. So think about that. And when in doubt, check it out. So if you're not entirely sure what individuals want and need, always find a way through one-on-one conversations, checklists, so forth, find a way to ask people how they most want to be appreciated. All right, next question is, how do we re-engage staff apart from recognition? Recognition, it's true, is one of many tools. The reason why I start with recognition, it is the easiest way to connect with people very quickly. It can encourage people to do it and to keep that going, and it is accessible to everyone. You don't have to generally pay very much money to recognize people. Mostly it's verbal thank you and so forth. And I get that it's not the only tool. If the only tool you have is a hammer, then you think everything looks like a nail. So I completely get where the question is coming from. Likely, you're going to need to look at your own team division. And so what do people say matters to them? What do they complain about? Those are the things that matter most to them. And what do they want to celebrate? Now, for example, let's say people are complaining that we don't have enough professional development. That's probably how we can spark and inspire and remotivate people. Supporting them to attend virtual conferences, bringing in experts, maybe whether it's bringing in is through virtual or, having a physically distanced way of being able to do that development, planning, attending, training for when COVID is over. So whether somebody complains about it or they ask for it, that's probably another way that, you can fulfill that particular need that people have. Similarly, getting people involved in things that bring them meaning and bring them joy. So let's say you have somebody who is a huge social convener. They love supporting the group. And in fact, maybe one of the things that they've missed during COVID is being able to help plan events. And, maybe they're always the one who organized the baby showers and so forth. How can they be tapped on the shoulder and invited to identify opportunities to be able to recreate social connection and meaningful relationship despite the physical distancing and remote work? Let's say you have somebody who's really, really good with procedures. One way to reignite that individual could be, let's take a look at the way in which we do our work when we're physically together, and how could we improve it? Now, I get that you don't have a whole bunch of people sitting around waiting for things to do. So giving people things to do just for the sake of giving somebody something to do, that's not what we're talking about. That will, of course, have the opposite effect. And there are many people who need to be doing meaningful work, and they will find a way to get their work done more efficiently so that they can get to the things that they really, really value. Work fills the time that we have. And I know many of you watching this are like, well, but I don't have enough time. I have to work longer hours. I get that. And there is research that shows that we can be more efficient, be more focused if we know exactly what is expected of us. So sometimes listening to people about what they most want and need and asking them, what might that look like if you were able to do more of that? If we were able to find a way to, shift that into the virtual world, what could we do? They may well find a way to make it work despite how zany things are. Hope that helps with the question around re-engaging folks. All right, how leaders are busy, absolutely responding to the pandemic to support their staff. Let's see, what's the full question here? So recognition activities, how can we provide some specific recognition when you're so busy? Absolutely, 100%. Couple things. I always use reminders to help me. So when I use my app for recognition, I've already pre-populated significant dates like birth dates and anniversaries, so I don't have to think about it and go through some kind of process. If it's a special day and it's a particularly large group of clients that I have, I'll put it in my calendar in advance every year when those days are. So for example, Administrative Professionals Day, I always have that in my calendar year to year because I never want to forget it, because I realize that a lot of admin professionals don't feel valued and appreciated, and I want to be somebody that at least they've heard it from one person how much they are valued. And what's the worst that happens? They get many people telling them how much they matter. I'm willing to take that chance. And so you can put things into your calendar so that you make sure as a busy leader, you don't forget it. Sometimes you can ask somebody for some help. So in the last video, people were asking about how can you leverage administrative professionals. This can be part of what they can do, is provide you some support. If you don't have an admin professional, then you can still create systems that would mimic what they would be able to do for you. So for example, maybe you set up a recurring meeting in your calendar at lunchtime for a half-hour touch base with people on their work anniversary. And the date that they start is the date when, and it's just an annual recurring meeting in your calendar. So you and the other person don't even have to think about it. It's just sitting in there. And then all of a sudden, here it is, Monday morning, you look at your calendar and you go, oh, wow, I have 3 lunches this week with people who have work anniversaries. This is great. And then you get a chance to connect with them. One of the folks that in this session, your commissioner, she was talking about how she's really missed having the monthly lunches with people because you're physically distanced and it's not safe to all get together at a restaurant. It has had to be put on hold. But one of the things we were talking about before we went live with our session is how she might be able to do that as a virtual lunch. So sending a skip the dishes gift certificate, or even just simply offering for people to join her and have a brown bag lunch, and then just have a conversation, connect with people. How are you doing? What ideas do you have? And so if you have a time earmarked in your calendar, then that allows you to know, I don't have an infinite amount of time to have 100 conversations. However, you can have a group of people that can come together to have a casual conversation. A client that I'm speaking for tomorrow, they have a system where they do wellness checks. And really what this is just very quick check-ins about how are you doing? And one vice president realized that a lot of the people in his virtual team were really struggling. So what he decided to do was to set up open, just kind of like happy hour, not with alcohol or anything, but just sort of a drop-in type of meeting. I think did he call it happy hour? I'm trying to remember what he called it. But the bottom line is, this is an open invitation for anyone who wants to jump in during, I think it was called a hangout, but it was through, I think it was Microsoft Teams. So that's why I couldn't remember. That's a Google term. But the point is, it's an hour that he was going to be on the line, and anyone who wanted to jump in could have a conversation with him. He could not believe how many people wanted to take him up on that offer. And even if people could only stay for 5 minutes, it gave them an opportunity to connect with him, anyone else who was on the line, and there was no work on the agenda. It was just touching base with people. It's once a month that he does this. So probably even the busiest leader can afford half an hour, 1 hour per month as a drop-in and an invitation, open invitation for anybody to stop in to chat about things that matter to them. There's some ideas, happy to share with you more if you have more questions about that. So what is the connection between the language of delicious, nutritious, and luscious? So 3 key points that I make in my presentation for recognition of virtual world is we need recognition to be nutritious, it needs to be delicious, and it needs to be luscious. Nutritious is that we need to recognize regularly. And this connects to one of 3 key points that I make in terms of why recognition is needed most. The first point is that it is universal. The second reason it matters is that it is needed. And the third reason why recognition is needed is because it's easy. So let's connect the dots here. So if it's nutritious and it's universal, in other words, every single person from your brand new staff member to the CEO or executive director to the member of your board, every single person needs to feel that they're doing work that matters, and that you would want them to make sure that they come back the next day, that they would be missed. It is a universal need. Every single person needs to be appreciated. So how do we do that? We need to make sure that they are appreciated. And 95% of people say, I want a thank you. And so thank people, thank them, thank them, thank them. At the risk of, you may feel, and I think there's a question coming up, can we overthank people? Well, take that risk, because most people are underthanked. So I would rather see more people feeling appreciated, and that you could just keep evolving and finessing your recognition, then people wonder if they're appreciated. So when it's nutritious, that means it meets the universal need. The next key point is delicious, and that relates to how needed it is. And this is talking about that platinum rule we were just discussing. I mean, we need to recognize people the way they want to be recognized. It's all the more delicious to receive an acknowledgement when it's given the way you need to be acknowledged. It is not delicious if you are a very private, humble person to be put on the spot in a team meeting and be asked to say a few words. You probably want to crawl into your own skin and hide. If you are a very, social person and you've made this huge project happen and you're just a shining star and you want to be acknowledged, and the only thing that you've ever received is a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, dinner voucher, that would not feel very delicious for you. It is easy to replicate. Connect it to the rituals you already have, or rituals that you've always used in the past. And also anything that you can do that is scalable, that creates a ripple effect. Peer-to-peer recognition is the single most important suggestion I have for any organization. If when in doubt, share it out. So make sure that everybody feels motivated, encouraged, have the tools, resources, support to recognize and acknowledge people as much as possible. Again, one of the things we're just talking about is collectivist cultures. So that recognition, peer-to-peer recognition likely will be team-based. If you have individual types of cultures where individuals are used to being celebrated and recognized, it's probably one-on-one, or publicly individuals recognize that people are going to want. But the bottom line is that the easier we make this, the easier in terms of rituals that we have, we already know how people want to be recognized, you know that in advance, we're more likely to do it. That's why I have an app to be able to send thank you cards now, as opposed to handwriting them. I would, even as a recognition expert, I would probably top out at 50 a year. That's like one a week. I mean, maybe it's more than one a week. It might have been more like 2 a week. But I sent 5 last night while I was waiting for my husband to come in from putting out the garbage last night. 5 in under 5 minutes is pretty darn good compared to my maybe 2 a month that I had before. And I get how valuable that they are. Actually, it's 2 a week. I don't know. Clearly, math's not my thing. The point is, though, find it to be really, really easy, and that is what makes it luscious for you and for all the people receiving the recognition. So, hopefully, that's clear how those points connect. All right. So how do you recognize your manager and anyone above you without it looking planned or that there's an ulterior motive? I'm so glad you asked this question. I very rarely get this question. We often think it is managing up, that we're just trying to, so many of us are afraid of sucking up, or that people have told us, don't be a suck up, don't be a brown noser, which is really actually kind of disgusting terms if you think about it. But really, the ripple effect of that, or the negative fallout, the unintended consequence, is that it's lonely at the top. It's lonely. I mean, the number of senior leaders that I've coached that wonder, am I doing a good job? I never get feedback. Are people just telling you what I want to hear? Or are they telling me the bad stuff? I want to know what's not working well so that I can be part of the solution of fixing it. So when you recognize somebody for what they're doing well, your intention is to genuinely acknowledge that person's contribution. So do it anyway. I mean, you probably don't want to do it in front of everybody if you're worried how it's going to go. You may want to do it just one-on-one. But the point is, your intention is not to use this as a political play or to try to get something out of this. Treat people who are in senior positions the way you would treat a peer, or the way you would treat a staff member. They are human beings. And human beings, no matter who you are, no matter your title, your tenure, your where you live, who you are, every single person needs to know that they're doing work that matters and that's making a difference. So take the opportunity to tell senior leaders what's working, because often they only hear what's not working, or they are constantly fighting fires or struggling to navigate their way through challenging, complex, competing priorities. When you can cut through all that noise and acknowledge the humanity in that human being, you connect on a whole new level. So never miss an opportunity to appreciate anybody, no matter what their title is. All right. And so last question is, how do you stay positive? Thank you for your energy. That's very, very kind of you. How do I stay positive? Here's my number one tip to you. And when I don't practice this, it changes the rest of my day. Instead of waking up in the morning thinking, I didn't get enough sleep, which I often don't. I have so much to do. Oh my gosh, how am I going to get it all done? I don't know what we're going to eat for dinner. Oh my God, I snapped at the kids last night. I don't think I did a very good job yesterday. I should have been more patient. It sets you in a deficit-based mindset. Instead, if you catch yourself doing that, and this is not just when you wake up, this can be any time throughout your day. As soon as you catch yourself saying all the things you're not doing well, all the things that could be different, ask yourself, is that completely true? So instead of in the morning when I wake up and I think, oh, I didn't get enough sleep, I have to immediately catch myself. And it is a discipline every single day. Every day, I have to say, wait a minute, how many hours did I get? I got 6. Could I have had more? Yes. Instead of a judgment, it becomes a fact. Could I have gotten more? Yes. Will I perhaps be a bit more tired than normal? Yes. Have I coped on less sleep? Yes. So it's taking out the judgment, the concern, the foreboding joy that Brene Brown talks about, that sort of caution ourselves of getting maybe too positive and then getting disappointed. Instead, wake up in the morning the way you want to approach your day. And that is, instead of seeing what's not working, look for what is working and be curious about that. So when you start your day and you've come from a place of what is working, it's so much easier to stay positive. The other tip I have for you, and actually I have a recent blog post about staying positive and optimistic, and as well as dealing with negativity and pessimism. So I'll put those links in below here. But the other tip I have for you is to not get overly attached on what other people respond. So when it comes to recognition, sometimes when we acknowledge somebody, we expect that they're going to receive it well. You have absolutely no control over how that person perceives it. It could be something that they feel embarrassed about because they're not used to getting acknowledged and they shirk it off and we think, shoot, I did it wrong. Maybe not, probably not. They may not be used to it. Maybe they would never received acknowledgement in a previous job, maybe at home. It was kind of was there an irregular thing. They may be just getting used to the idea and they not quite know how to respond. So when it comes to recognition, that's true. When it comes to just about everything, it's true. I can remember when we decided to move. One of my kids really was hit. The mental health was a huge challenge for one of my kids at one time. And the environment that my child was in was very unhealthy. So we decided to make a major move. My best friend at the time really struggled with this because, we were best friends. We were close. We lived around the corner from each other. We spent tons of time together. Our kids were the same age. They were very good friends. She took it personally that we moved and was offended that we didn't sort of engage with them, consult with them more about our plans. Everything happened very quickly. We were worried about our child's mental health more than anything else. And I didn't realize why she was very snappy with me for an entire year. Until it eventually came out that she felt like we had abandoned them. I had absolutely no control over how she perceived our important life decision to move. And I wish that she had known and had that insight that she felt hurt by our decision, and she had shared that with me so we could have talked openly about it. But instead, it created this festering resentment in her, and then it transferred to me. Now, unfortunately, the tail end of that story is I decided it wasn't a healthy friendship for me to have anymore. And it took her a couple more years to figure out what it was about. But the bottom line of any relationship is, as close as we were closer than two friends could possibly be. But I, even in that really close, long relationship that I had absolutely no control over how she handled a big life event. That was our choice. How many times have you had situations like that, personally and professionally? You cannot control how other people experience you and your decisions. Sometimes you can influence it. You can try your best to build strong relationships, to help people, deal with news better, to make sure that they, know that you've done your best to make sure that they feel appreciated, that you help them get, connected to resources that they need, such as mental health support and so forth. And you can only control what is within your circle of influence. Stephen Covey talked about circle of influence, circle of concern. There are many things that you're concerned about you don't have control over. There's many things that you can control, but it's not as many things as you are interested in and that you're concerned about. Get really clear what you have control over. I can tell people that I value them. It's their job to take it, receive it, and feel valued. I have control over giving information to people. It's their job to take it and do something with it. I can send emails and memos and video reminders to people. It's their job to follow up with it. I can make sure I assign tasks and clarify that this is what's expected and ask them, do you have any questions? And then it's their job to tell you if they have questions. It is a two-way street. Leadership, yes, a lot of it is on your shoulders, and it's not 100%. Part of how I stay positive is I try to remind myself what I have control over and what I don't. It's been an important parenting lesson too. I have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old. They're pretty darn amazing creatures, and they also have a lot of hormonal and other influences and challenges. One of the most important things I need to remind myself on a daily basis is I'm responsible for my own happiness. I'm responsible for my own self-care, and I'm responsible for showing up as well as I possibly can for them. If they are having a rough day, there is very little other than showing that I appreciate them, providing healthy meals, making sure that they know that they're loved and they're cared for, and all the other stuff that they're going through. I don't even necessarily know, and I want to help them as much as I can, but I can't do all the work for them of growing up. To some extent, we have to let that go. It's the same way in the workplace. Not that our employees are our kids. However, there's only so much that we can do. Some of the work of growth, of asking for help, of managing some of the things that they're struggling with is their responsibility. So how do we stay positive? We stay positive about the contribution we are making, not all the things that perhaps we're not seeing in terms of results or that we'd like to see different. And remember, in this challenging time, as I'm filming this in the midst of COVID, there is so much on your plate. If there's one last thing I can leave you with when it comes to feeling positive, look back in the rearview mirror and see how far you've come, and look forward in front of you and see, if I have managed to get this far, what are all the things that I've learned and done to get this far, and how will that serve me well in the future? That's my last final parting words of hopefully motivation for you as well as insight. Thank you so much for what you're doing. You truly are doing such important work. I hope you know that. I hope you feel valued, and thank you so much.